Howdy folks, welcome back to Mingles with Jingles, and we're starting off this week straight away with Wanker of the Week, because I know you all love it. This is King Rooster in the Type 3 Chinook, and he has the massive misfortune to be in the same game as this cockbag, Cage 24, in the KV1, who literally seconds after the game started has decided, screw it, even fights are for suckers, let's give the enemy team a free kill. And this is just a taste of the douchebaggery that we have in store for you on this week's Wanker of the Week. Next up, we have an example of the extreme lengths that sad and lonely little losers will go to try to piss me off in War Thunder. This is a sample of my chat window that I discovered upon exiting a replay while recording a video for this very episode of Mingles with Jingles. I had no idea how long it took him to do this, but I didn't notice any of it because I was in the game. And I only noticed it when I came out to exit, so hey, I appreciate the effort anyway, but try harder next time. Next, you can always rely on artillery to act like douchebags when the game's over and they're the last one left alive on their team. This moron, however, he couldn't even suicide properly. It literally took him 3 attempts to find a patch of water deep enough to drown his crew. There we go, there we go. All you have to do is stay still. Just don't move. You moved. No, you had it there. That was it. There it is. Finally. Jeez, you can't even be a douchebag efficiently. I mean, seriously. Artillery players? It's just not good enough. While we're on the subject of artillery, as any light tank driver will tell you, the only thing more dangerous to you than enemy tanks is your own artillery. As I'm sure this ERC driver would agree. This one gave me some problems. I wasn't sure about whether or not to include it. The T1 Heavy, I'm sure you'll agree, is just being a royal cockmuncher here. There's no reason for this. However, the guy who sent the replay in, the SU-76, didn't really do himself any favours either. And neither did his little friend in the Marder 2. Now, he tries to justify this by saying all I did was shoot at his tracks. Well, you might have aimed at his tracks, but you hit him in the engine. And between the two of you, you just put the top tier heavy tank on your team down to half health. And that's before you've even left the cap circle. What's bizarre is that the T1 Heavy kept saying sorry every time he shot him. Oh well, no hard feelings. Except a minute later, oh, okay, apparently there were hard feelings. But it's alright, he said sorry. Yeah, this may cost me a subscriber, but I'm going to have to call douchebags all round on that one. Seconds into the start of a match on Westfield, High Gearhead at the back there in the KV1 just goes full retard. What makes this bizarre is that he acts in chat as if he's been provoked, but he totally hasn't. The T150 doesn't even try to defend himself. T150 driver doesn't retaliate, he doesn't respond to him in chat, he doesn't say a word to him, he just carries on playing the game, all the while being shot in the back by High Gearhead's KV1. High Gearhead is of course so dazzlingly incompetent that he can't even hit the back of a T150 from 10 metres, otherwise this would have ended a lot sooner than it did, but he's nothing if not persistent. The amount of restraint shown by this T150 driver is nothing short of superhuman, but it's only going to end one way when you've got a guy like this on your team. And then to add insult to injury, he calls him a bitch, and then starts shooting into his wreck. I mean, what did the T150 driver do to piss him off that much? Turns out he didn't actually do anything. This guy, look at this, there's a perfectly good 360-1H in front of him he could be shooting at, but no, he's going to miss the ARL-44 on his own team from 15 metres range, and then he's going to miss a TOG-2 parked right in front of him, also on his own team, from like, how do you miss a TOG-2? Just, the mind boggles. He really is just that shit. Yeah, there's no other explanation. This guy's just so monumentally bad at World of Tanks that 3 friendly tanks he tried to team kill at point blank range, and he could only hit one of them half the time. If anybody from Wargaming North America just happens to be watching this video, there's his name. You know what to do. But this week's number one wanker of the week is the Waffenträger E100 driver on this team. Have a look at the map here. Two artillery players are retreating from a flank that has just collapsed. You'll note that the Waffenträger E100 is also running headlong with his tail between his legs. Artillery retreat to a new firing position, turn around, try to give him covering fire. He dies anyway. And that is exactly where this little pus-filled boil on the arse of humanity in the Waffenträger E100 has a massive temper tantrum, decides that if he's not having a good game, nobody's having a good game, and proceeds to throw the match for his team by telling the enemy exactly where friendly artillery is. The rest of his team could have won this, the scores were even, but this douchebag, not content with just telling the enemy team where the remaining tanks on his own team are, even starts warning them when they're specifically being targeted by artillery. T30, move, artillery's focusing on you. So, Heretic Doom 23, driver of the Waffenträger E100, congratulations, there was some stiff competition, but you are beyond a shadow of the doubt this week's Wanker of the Week. You are a spoilt, angry little cockholster of such massive proportions that I would rather shit in my own pants and sit in it than spend a minute longer than necessary playing the same game as you. Congratulations. So, that was fun. Welcome. I know everybody loves Wanker of the Week. I thought, since I missed it last week because I was just too busy to include a Wanker of the Week segment, it does take about 4 hours of editing to get all that together. I thought you deserved Wanker of the Week right in your face in this week's Mingles with Jingles. And this week's Mingles with Jingles is special. That's right, today is the 10th of March, and it's a very, very special date. On the 10th of March, 1940, Chuck Norris was born. Yep, Chuck Norris is 74 years old today, believe it or not. But Chuck Norris is only the second most awesome person born on the 10th of March. For today is my birthday. I'm 44 years old today. That's right. I also share this day with Osama bin Laden. But, you know, we'll just keep that between ourselves. Osama's dead. He doesn't count. But me and Chuck, still going strong. That's right. 44 years experience of not dying. I am actually getting pretty good at it now. And, you know, it's not a bad old life. Playing computer games for a living at 44 years of age is, you know, there are worse things I could be doing. It's a tough job, but somebody has to do it. And it's been a pretty good week as well. I've had, obviously, we reached 200,000 subscribers this week, and all week we've been doing the 200,000 subscriber celebration stuff. So I've been joining live streams with, well, there's a regular live streams on Monday with Circumflexes, Thursday with Quickie Baby, and then I stream bombed Rita Gamer and Melanthus on Tuesday and Wednesday. Friday, I had a day off. All I had to do on Friday was put a video up. Gave away £400 worth of World of Tanks prizes, gold, premium account time, premium tanks, during the 4 World of Tanks live streams I did this week. And then Saturday night, I live streamed War Thunder with Sidestrafe, who's also reached 150,000 subscribers. It's been a big week for him as well. Quickie Baby just reached 100,000 subscribers. It seems to be a really, really good time to be in the business of putting videos up on YouTube if you play World of Tanks and War Thunder. So it's pretty much just been a great week. It's been a busy week, but it's been a lot of fun, especially doing the live streams, and thank you all for your messages of support and congratulations for reaching 200,000 subscribers. I can't respond to all of them, there've just been far too many, so instead I'll respond to them here. Thank you very much. Your support is always appreciated. But while it's undeniably great to have so many loyal supporters, some of you can take it just a little bit too far. And what I'm referring to here is, well, this is just one incident. Regrettably, there have been a few. And what I'm talking about is I recently put up a KV2 derp video. And in that video, the background music was the national anthem of the Soviet Union, as sung by the Red Army Choir. Now, I was aware when I made that choice that it was likely that given the current political situation in the Ukraine and the Crimea, people were going to get their panties in a twist over my choice of music. You know what it's like, it's the internet. And things like facts and common sense have very, very little to do with how people react to things. Little facts like the Soviet Union hasn't existed for nearly 30 years are never going to get in the way of people who are determined to take offence. And it doesn't matter what I do, there's going to be that small core element of haters who are just going to use any opportunity they can to criticise whatever I do. It's part and parcel of being a big YouTube channel. The overwhelming majority of you out there did not automatically assume that because I put a video up with the Soviet national anthem playing that I was endorsing modern Russia's actions in the Ukraine, because the overwhelming majority of you aren't drooling idiots. And one person in particular, one of my oldest subscribers, a guy who's been with the channel almost since the very beginning, posted a very polite question in the comments to that video asking me if I wasn't concerned that people were going to interpret my putting this video up as an endorsement of what modern Russia is currently doing in the Ukraine. And boy did he regret asking a polite question, because he got bombarded with the most vicious and hateful streak of abuse that I was frankly ashamed. He got so much hate mail in his YouTube inbox that he's had to unsubscribe from my channel. He has resubscribed using a different account. But, oh guys, really, I'm a big boy now. I can fight my own battles. I do appreciate your loyalty, but sometimes you take it just a little bit too far. I would love to think that people could have a lively, intelligent discussion in the comment section of my videos. People don't always have to agree with everything that I say or do, and provided people are prepared to voice their opinions in a reasonably polite manner, I have no problem whatsoever with anything that's said in the comment section of my videos. I realise I'm probably wishing for something that's never going to happen. I mean, you show me a video on YouTube that doesn't have a flame war going on in the comments somewhere, and I'll show you a video that doesn't have any comments. It's YouTube. But I have seen people having really good conversations in the comment section of my videos, and I'm getting really concerned that people are afraid to voice an honest opinion because they're frightened of the reaction that they're going to get from some of my more overly loyal supporters. People who don't agree with me have made a fantastic contribution to the content of the videos that I put up for you on a daily basis. Remember that whole fiasco with Belton Cooper's Death Traps book where I just got it completely wrong? If it wasn't for people pointing out my mistakes and disagreeing with what I'd said, I wouldn't have a clue that Belton Cooper was talking out of his arse, and I'd misled tens of thousands of you about Sherman tanks and the Pershing tank in the Second World War. And I'm very grateful that a whole bunch of people stepped forward and said, Jingles, Belton Cooper is full of shit, and you're full of shit for repeating what he said and not researching your facts. And they were absolutely right, and their pointing that out has made my channel a better place to be, because now I do check my facts, and most of the time get it right. I'll still make mistakes, and if people don't feel comfortable pointing out my mistakes because they're afraid of the savaging that they might get in the comments if they're brave enough to do it, well, that wouldn't be good for anybody. So, my apologies for starting off on a little bit of a bummer this week, but I do feel that it needed to be said. In fact, it's probably one of the most important things that I'm likely to say in this week's Mingles with Jingles. I mean, I'm not stupid. I can't possibly moderate all of the comments that appear in my videos, and I know there are going to be flame wars regardless of what I say, but if you could just try to confine your flame wars to those who richly deserve it, rather than people who are just expressing honest opinions about the content that I put up, that would be fantastic. Anyway, moving on. As always, I receive far too many messages on any given day to possibly be able to read them all. However, I do try to read as many of them as possible, and there's a couple of messages that I got this week that I'm especially proud of, and I wanted to read back to you guys. The first one comes from Curian Lightwing, playing World of Tanks on the North American East server. He's quite new to the game, and he had this to say. He felt the need to send me a message because he got a Kolobanoff's medal for the first time in World of Tanks. He got it the other day playing the T-18 tank destroyer. Granted, most say it's overpowered. Do you think? But he wasn't using the 75mm howitzer, and he's pretty sure he would have died, but thanks to the knowledge that he gained on how to angle his tanks from watching my videos, which he didn't even think was part of the game, he came out on top against 6 tanks by himself. They were all a tier higher than him, and in total he racked up 928 damage in a tier 2 tank destroyer and took a potential damage received of 528. So in conclusion, he wanted to thank me for the advice and tell me to keep doing what I'm doing. I think that is absolutely fantastic. It's not the reason why I put these videos up, but it's one of the reasons why I put these videos up. The fact that the guy's new to the game, he's probably only been playing a couple of weeks. He's down at tier 2, possibly tier 3 by now, and he's already not a window licker. That is just, my work here is done. Well, needless to say, that was great, and I was really, really pleased to hear that. Because, World of Tanks, I do generally know what I'm doing in World of Tanks, even if sometimes I panic and get flustered under pressure and I'm not able to put the theory into practice. At least I know the theory. But what came as a big surprise was a couple of days later when I got a similar message about War Thunder. This one came from Brian Harries, and he sent a message saying, "I just wanted to thank you for those moments in your videos where you explain manoeuvres and aircraft strengths for those of us who don't know already. A couple of days ago I learned from your videos that the BF-109 should be played in a climbing diving style and to avoid turning engagements. I went home and immediately got a 5 kill streak in arcade using that technique. Today I learned the scissors manoeuvre for agile planes like the Spitfire, and I look forward to trying it the next time I fly my British squad." Whoa. Somebody actually learned something from one of my War Thunder videos? Wow. Hey, RamJB, Bismarck, who's your daddy now, bitches? That's right, I'm the man. Wow. Yeah, that's right, Bismarck. That's right, Ram. When last we met, I was but the learner. But now I am the master. Yeah, alright. We all know the reality. Let me just enjoy the fantasy while it lasts. But seriously, the fact that somebody's actually learning something from one of my War Thunder videos is just amazing. I think it's probably safe to say you have already plumbed the depths of my knowledge when it comes to flying aircraft. But by all means continue enjoying watching the videos, just don't expect to learn too much more from them. If you're serious about flying, certainly in War Thunder, I do recommend you check out other channels. RamJB, who has stopped doing War Thunder videos, but the stuff that he has put up is still really, really good. And then Bismarck, who is still flying and is a far, far better virtual pilot than I will ever be. Links to both their channels in the video description, but the fact that you've learned something from watching one of my videos I thought was hilarious. And I'm probably not the only person who thinks that's funny. Thanks anyway. Anyway, moving on. Next question. Well, technically I suppose this is the first actual question rather than just a message. This comes from the fantastically well named Snooty Gobbler, and he's got a question that is going to provoke countless arguments in the comments section of this video. He wants to know, Jingles, what are your top 10 favourite video games of all time? Well, first things first. For me it's going to be PC games, or computer games rather than video games, because I have only ever owned one gaming console, and that was the Atari VCS, which was made of wood and plastic. Seriously, I'm not joking. And around about 1975, 76, 77, back in prehistory. And that doesn't really count. Listening to a list of my top 10 games is going to be like listening to a history of computer games. But anyway, here goes. And I'm not responsible if most of you have never heard of any of these games, okay? If you've ever played or even heard of any of these games, you're probably far too old to be playing silly computer games in the first place. But here it goes. And from 10 to 2, they're going to be in no particular order. I'm not expressing any preference, except for the number 1, which will save to last and is my personal favourite game of all time ever. So, here goes. Probably not going to come as any great surprise to see World of Tanks and War Thunder on their list. Despite their flaws, and I do acknowledge that they have flaws, I have had countless hours of fun and entertainment and frustration playing these two games, so they have to appear on the list somewhere. So we'll call them number 10 and number 9. Next, at number 8 I suppose, is The Reason Why I Am a PC Gamer, Star Wars X-Wing by LucasArts. I bought a PC purely so I could play this game. At the time, I was a confirmed Commodore Amiga player. I had my Amiga 500, and then I upgraded that to an Amiga 1200. This game was supposed to be coming out on the Amiga, but at the last moment LucasArts cancelled it and made it a PC-only release, although I think it came out on the Mac as well, but who's counting? I actually completed the first tour of duty in X-Wing using... I'm almost ashamed to say this. I was a trackpad player. I didn't have a PC. I bought the game the day it came out. Didn't have my own PC to play it on. I borrowed a friend's black and white 386SX laptop. Didn't have a mouse. And I played it using the trackpad on the laptop. And then, of course, they brought out the sequel. There were a bunch of mission discs, and then the sequel came out, and it was even better. Star Wars TIE Fighter. Now, even though this was a single-player game, at the time I got this, I'd very recently gotten online for the first time. And I went online and I found a club, an online club called the Emperor's Hammer, who were dedicated to playing all of the LucasArts Star Wars flight sim games. Particularly TIE Fighter, as the name of the club would suggest, the Emperor's Hammer. Now, what made this so exciting at the time was that long before there was any real kind of multiplayer gaming online, these guys were modding the game. They'd written their own mission editor, and there was a huge collection of custom missions that was available for the guys in the club to play and compare their scores against each other. And the whole club was organised along military lines. So, for example, when I first joined the club, I was assigned to Flight 3 of Tornado Squadron of Wing 10 on board the Imperial Star Destroyer Challenge, which belonged to Battle Group 2. And at each step in the command chain, there was another player, another member of the club. So each flight would have a flight leader. 3 flights in a squadron, which would be commanded by a squadron commander. There would be 3 squadrons in a wing, 2 wings on board each Star Destroyer, and multiple Star Destroyers assigned to each battle group. The battle group would have a battle group commander. There would be a Commodore assigned to command and basically look after each Star Destroyer. 2 wing commanders in charge of the wings on each Star Destroyer, and all of these guys were responsible for looking after the people below them. It was a fantastic system. It worked really, really, really well. I eventually rose to the rank of Fleet Admiral and Commander of the TIE Fighter Corps, 4th in command of the entire club as a whole, after the founder, the Fleet Admiral, the Executive Officer, and the Training Officer. I managed to keep that up for about 3 months before the workload crippled me. I retired from flag rank to take the rank of Colonel and go back to commanding my first home in the fleet, Tornado Squadron. But of course, you know, this wasn't really multiplayer gaming. No, my first taste of multiplayer gaming came with yet another Star Wars game, X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter. This was my first real taste of multiplayer gaming, and it took all the elements that had made X-Wing and TIE Fighter so successful, the whole energy management system that you had to apply to your starfighters, the fact that your power plant only put out so much power and you had to split that between your engines, your shields and your weapons, and took it to the next level by pitting you against human pilots. And I got really, really good at X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. As a dedicated Imperial pilot, I was of course flying ships like the TIE Fighter and the TIE Bomber, ships that don't have any shields. The TIE Fighter in particular, 2 solid hits from an X-Wing's laser cannon, it's dead. I got very, very good at flying those things. In fact, my speciality was humiliating X-Wing pilots by outflying them in a TIE Bomber. And we're not talking about exploiting broken flight mechanics the way it's possible to do in a game like War Thunder, for example. Just understanding the way the game worked and the fact that as your speed decreased, your turning circle also decreased, and with careful throttle management you could, even in something as ungainly and lumbering as the TIE Brick, as everybody called the TIE Bomber, turn inside an X-Wing. If the X-Wing pilot didn't really know what he was doing, it was just so easy to kill them over and over and over, even though they outgunned, were more heavily armoured, and could outmaneuver you. It was just so satisfying killing X-Wings in a TIE Bomber. The number of times I'd get accused of hacking and cheating by X-Wing and even A-Wing pilots who just didn't understand how I could stay on their tail and shoot them down in a bomber. Oh, it was so satisfying. It's amazing thinking of the amount of fun that we actually made for ourselves back in those days. I'll give you an example. Using X-Wing versus TIE Fighter in the Emperor's Hammer, we designed a massive training exercise for everybody in the TIE Fighter Corps. We already had everybody in the fleet was already organised into squadrons, wings, Star Destroyers, battle groups, and so all we did was we designed a map of the galaxy, and then we asked each of the 2 battle group commanders to deploy their fleets throughout the galaxy, and every day they were allowed to move their forces around the map. We set up certain planets and certain star systems that were strategically important, that allowed them to replenish, for example, crews that were lost in combat, or extend the range of the hyperdrives of their ships. And then we just let them get on with it. And the second any ships from Battle Group 1 moved into a sector that was occupied by Battle Group 2, for example, we'd call a halt to the game, and we'd write a custom mission for X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, and that weekend we'd run the battle. And the battle would be fought by the pilots who belonged to the squadrons that were actually involved in the battle. So if you belonged to Imperial Star Destroyer Challenge, and the Imperial Star Destroyer Challenge had moved into the Chandra sector, and the Chandra sector had been fortified by Battle Group 1, then the guys who belonged to Wing 10 on board the Challenge would have to turn up on that Saturday night in the Microsoft Internet Gaming Zone and fly against the guys from Battle Group 1, however many there were. We weren't interested in making a fair fight. You know, if your ship had been sent into a sector where it was outnumbered 5-1, then you would have to fight a battle where you were outnumbered 5-1. Now, what the battle group commanders were responsible for was strategy. Right? They decided which sectors needed to be conquered, and they deployed their forces around the galaxy map to achieve that outcome. When it actually came down to a shooting fight, command devolved to whichever officer was senior at the location. So in the case of the example that we've just given, Imperial Star Destroyer Challenge has just moved into the Chandra sector. It's heavily outnumbered 5-1 by Battle Group 1 forces already in the sector. The Commodore of the ISD Challenge would have to make the decision. Is he going to stand and fight, or is he going to try to jump out? If he does decide to retreat, it takes 10 minutes for his hyperdrive to power up. The pilots under his command have to fight it out for 10 minutes before they can safely abandon the battlefield. Any ships that get shot down, any pilots that get killed, permanently out of the game. And if the enemy fleet had an interdictor cruiser handy, you couldn't even jump out using your hyperdrive. Hyperdrives don't work when there's a powered up interdictor around. So the Commodore would have to issue the orders and basically sacrifice his starfighters to kill the enemy interdictor in order to get the Star Destroyer out to safety. Stuff like this was going on all the time. It was just, I am immensely proud of what we managed to achieve using the primitive tools that were available to us in the mid-1990s. To this day, I have never seen a PC game that even remotely comes close to the level of strategy and tactics that went into this basically mod that we wrote for X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. We were basically doing the kind of massive fleet actions you get in EVE Online 10 years before there was EVE Online. I think that's something to be proud of. At number 5, I've got to go with Mass Effect. Mass Effect 1, 2 and 3. 3 of the most amazing, complete, single-player gaming experiences I can ever remember on any gaming platform. All too often, a new game will come out, and you'll hear this game's cost X million dollars to produce, and you play the game and you think, where the hell did the money go? Right. You never thought that playing a Mass Effect game. It was always obvious where the money went. It was right there on screen in front of you. You definitely got your money's worth out of this series of games. The art direction of these games was spectacular. The little things that you just take for granted. The utterly believable universe that BioWare created and then populated it with the most incredible range of utterly believable characters. Characters that you actually gave a shit about, and that is a rare achievement to make in a video game. Populating it with a bunch of characters that you actually cared about what happened to them. Everything about these games just oozed quality. The art direction, the music, the voice acting, the plot, the storyline, the dialogue, everything was perfect. Except for the last 10 minutes of Mass Effect 3. And the fact that so many people got so upset by the last 10 minutes of Mass Effect 3 should be a testament to just how loved this series of games was, because nobody gives a shit about a game they don't love. And any game that can inspire the level of passion that Mass Effect did deserves a look. Trust me, if you've not played any of the Mass Effect games, despite the crushing disappointment and sense of betrayal you are going to feel at the end of Mass Effect 3, they're still worth it. The next one I'm going to go for in the number 4 spot is the original Medal of Honor Allied Assault on the PC. Now, it wasn't the first Second World War FPS that had been out on the PC, and it certainly wasn't the last. There have been many other games since. Many other games, and particularly the original Call of Duty series before they went Modern Warfare, which were arguably better games than Medal of Honor Allied Assault. But Medal of Honor Allied Assault set the standard for the games that were to follow. It raised the bar to a level that hadn't really been seen before. And of course we're talking about that opening sequence. The Omaha Beach D-Day Normandy landing sequence. In much the same way that the opening sequence of Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan brought the horror of Second World War combat to a modern audience. A modern audience whose idea of battles in the Second World War up to that point had largely been, what's the right word? You know, the kind of Second World War movies that we'd had, which were great movies up to that point. Movies like The Longest Day, A Bridge Too Far, The Battle of the Bulge. You know, they were great movies in their own way, but they were very Hollywood. Saving Private Ryan was as real and gritty as you could get without actually being there on the beach getting shot at yourself. Medal of Honor Allied Assault, it was kind of the same. The game was obviously heavily influenced by the opening sequence of Saving Private Ryan, but what they managed to do in the beach assault sequence in Medal of Honor was something that, I mean, I'm sure that there were gameplay mechanics going on behind it, but whereas in other games, more notably the Call of Duty games that have happened lately, you know what it's like, where you know exactly when you're being presented with gameplay mechanics. You must advance to a certain point, otherwise the enemies will keep spawning and coming after you. And there was none of that in Medal of Honor. Or if there was, they hid it really, really well so that you didn't notice it. And you never really felt that you were fighting a game mechanic. It was as close as a game could possibly come to really making you feel like you were there on that goddamn beach, desperate to find the slightest bit of cover as the beach is being swept by machine gun fire. You're concussed and shell-shocked from the detonation of artillery. Everywhere in front of you, you can see anybody standing up and making themselves a target is just getting cut down. You're desperately trying to get off that beach. The amount of times you just died on the beach, and until eventually you figured out that you've got to actually take this seriously, or you're never going to get off that beach alive. It wasn't just like a game, it was like you were actually there. You know, in as much as you can feel like you're actually there playing a computer game. It really was an astonishingly good game. It's just a shame that the Medal of Honor games since have not really been up to the same standard, but it's a problem that you have for all game developers when the first game you push out in the series is just so mind-bogglingly good. I mean, how the hell are you ever going to follow an act like that? But it is a rare achievement for a development company to actually match the success of the first game in a series. It's always a tough act to follow. There haven't been many that have done it. BioWare did it with the Mass Effect games, and it's one of the reasons Mass Effect is on this list. Medal of Honor couldn't quite manage it. Number 3, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. I'm sure this is going to be a controversial choice because people hate the Call of Duty series, but I think it's important to make a distinction. People hate what the Call of Duty series has become. The first and arguably the second game in the series, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, really were standard bearers for the new wave of post-World War II shooters, the realistic modern shooter. And yes, I know most of you are probably choking on your cornflakes and spluttering in indignation because I dared to use the word realistic in association with the Modern Warfare game. Yeah, I know what you mean, but you know what I mean as well. It was as realistic as you could expect a first-person shooter to be, and still be a mass-market fun game at the same time. It used realistic locations, it used realistic weapon loadouts, it used realistic, to a degree, political situations. And when I say realistic, I realise I'm talking Hollywood realistic here. But it was another one of those games that actually, which is a first for a first-person shooter, actually made you care about the characters other than the character you were playing. Characters like Soap, characters like Captain Price. And while there may very well be certain members of the Special Forces community who still can't believe I'm using the word realistic in association with a Modern Warfare game, it did at least use realistic attention to detail in a way that really had not been done in a video game up to this point. And the game did manage a lot of firsts, and it's important that, whatever the Call of Duty games have turned into, they're pretty much a parody of themselves at this point. But back then at the beginning, in Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare and in Modern Warfare 2, they did do a lot of things that hadn't really been done in first-person shooters before. The stealth elements. Yeah, sure, there'd been stealth games before. Metal Gear Solid obviously had stealth elements. Thief, perfect example of a stealth game. And there were other games like that. But there hadn't really been a big first-person shooter that made you stop and think about how you were going to approach the situation. Just going in all guns blazing might have worked in first-person shooters prior to Call of Duty 4, but in Call of Duty 4, there were definite situations where going John Rambo was just going to get you killed. And that hadn't really been done in such a big game prior to this. Now, Modern Warfare 2, what that did was it would put you in the same kind of situations that you would recognise from the first game. But then it would flip the situation on its head. So just as you were coming to a part in the game where you thought, oh yeah, I remember this sort of thing happening in the first game, I know what's going to happen next. Oh no. They would then do exactly the opposite just to keep you guessing, and I really did appreciate that. Sadly, after Modern Warfare 2, the game designers seem to just run out of ideas, and it is hard to keep innovating within a game series like this. Unfortunately, and this is kind of where the hatred for Modern Warfare has manifested, in that since Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, they have not really done anything new, and they're just doing the same tired old shit over and over and over again, and it's as if they've just given up trying. But the first two games in the series were fantastic, and certainly, in my opinion, deserve a place on this list. In the number 2 spot, Star Wars Galaxies. Star Wars Galaxies was not... what can I say? I'm a fan of Star Wars. It was not the first massively multiplayer online game that I played. That honour would go to Ultima Online by Richard Garriott. But Star Wars Galaxies was and remains the best. It was a massively flawed game, right? It had its problems. That it was buggy. That the internet infrastructure really wasn't there at the time to support a game that was this ambitious and this huge, and yet it was just pure genius. That it could have and should have been so much bigger than it was, and it is purely because of the colossal ineptitude and downright dishonesty of Sony Online Entertainment, who ran the game, that this game just failed utterly. And it is a crying shame, because the passion of the community behind it was... I've never seen anything like it since. Possibly some of the guys who've been playing EVE Online for years will understand the level of commitment that nearly everybody who played Star Wars Galaxies felt towards this game, and can therefore also understand the hatred that to this day we all feel for SOE because of the way they destroyed something that could have and should have been beautiful. But I'm going to talk more about Star Wars Galaxies in a future video, because I still owe you a look at Star Wars Galaxies. It's something that I've been meaning to do, and I just keep getting sidetracked by other stuff that needs doing more urgently and more importantly before I get around to it. But it is going to happen. I've taken a look at Star Wars The Old Republic by BioWare, and I did promise I was going to show you exactly the kind of legacy that Star Wars The Old Republic had to compete with, and that legacy, of course, is Star Wars Galaxies. I will be doing a video on Star Wars Galaxies so you can just see the kind of stuff that we could have had if only Sony Online Entertainment didn't suck quite so much. So that brings us to the number one spot, and in my mind there is absolutely no doubt. I'm not saying any of the previous games were any better than any of the other previous games, but when it comes to my favourite computer game of all time, there is only one contender. This is The Secret of Monkey Island by Ron Gilbert. I first played this on the Commodore Amiga 500. This remains the best adventure game I have ever played, even to this day. I've replayed it in the last year, and it's still just as funny now as it was 20 years ago. This game was so funny. It had everything. It had pirates, it had voodoo, it had zombies, it had spitting contests, it had Mardi Gras fish fries, it had insult sword fighting. It had undead zombie pirates. It was just so funny. Of course, the graphics are absolutely atrocious by today's standard, but there are enhanced editions of the game available with cleaned up graphics, CD quality music, and you know what? It's just not the same. In fact, it's not fair for me to say that this is the best adventure game I've ever played. I did play one that was better than this. The Secret of Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge. It's one of those rare games where the sequel was actually better than the first game in the series. And if you are turned off, and I can completely understand if you are, by the ropey 16-bit graphics of the original games, there are enhanced versions of these games available. Enhanced versions that you can play on your iPhone or your iPad for less than the price of a cheeseburger. Alright, maybe not one cheeseburger, maybe less than the price of 2 cheeseburgers, but we're talking £3 or $5 in the iTunes store. Don't take my word for it. These games will cost you next to nothing, and they are just as funny now as when they were made 20 years ago. I highly recommend them. I must leave you with one word of warning, however. If you do play these two games and you think those were fantastic, then great. But do not under any circumstances be tempted to play any of the games that came after Monkey Island 2. Just trust your Uncle Jingles, don't touch any of the other sequels, and your memory of the finest graphical adventure games that the world has ever known will remain untarnished. And I was going to say that's all I have time for this week, but holy shit, 43 minutes. This is old school Mingles with Jingles. This may as well be a podcast. Okay, right, that's enough. It's now 24 minutes past 4 on the morning of the 10th of March. I've got far better ways to spend my birthday. Did I mention it's my birthday? Yeah, I think I did about 43 minutes ago. Anyway, as always, folks, take care out there. Have fun playing whatever you're playing, and I'll catch you next time.